Hi, my name is Minda Hartz, and I'm the host of Secure the Seat. Each week on LinkedIn Live at noon, I have lunch with one of my favorite leaders. And today I'm really excited to have my friend here, Arlan Hamilton, the new author of, you see it behind her, It's About Damn Time. Welcome, Arlan.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And you see it behind me because of your inspiration.
It looks good. It looks really good.
Keep up with Minda.
Listen, we're so excited that you're here. If you are watching us on YouTube or you're watching us here on LinkedIn, or maybe you're watching us later on today, we're really happy that you're here. You could be anywhere on the internet right now and you're here with us. So as I'm asking Arlan questions, please feel free to drop your questions inside of the chat. I'll make sure that I get as many as we can. But Arlan, for those who may not be familiar with your work, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my phone is falling, and I am the founder and managing partner of a venture fund called Backstage Capital that was launched officially in 2015 after about 4.5 years of building it up. And we invest in startup companies, and mostly tech-enabled, more and more these days. Have invested in more than 100 of those companies. And the distinction there is that each of those companies is led by either a woman, a person of color, or an LGBTQ identifying person, or a combination thereof, and have raised about $12 million in the last 4.5-5 years.
Wow. Congratulations. I know that I've been rooting for you, and I know others who are joining in are doing the same. And I love your book. I just have to say that it's behind my shoulder here on my backdrop.
Can I say yours is right there. It's a lot of mutual love.
A lot of mutual love. And, one of the ways I love that you use your platform is to share your thought leadership in a lot of different ways. And, people always ask me, well, do I need to write a book? Do I need to start a podcast? You have, a podcast as well. But why did you decide to use your thought leadership in this way to write a book?
I realized yesterday, actually, this is going to be meta, because while recording a podcast, I realized this in a very succinct way, is that I wrote the book for myself 10 years ago. And in doing so, it really was a couple of reasons. One was I feel like books are very accessible, and the price point, the ubiquity of it all. To me, it's something that even when in my lowest times, when I had no money, I could still find my way to a store. I could still find my way to a library, and I like the fact that people of all ages can reach it. And it's also timeless. How many books do we have? Do we look to? Do we reference that came out years and years and decades ago, and more than that in some cases? And so that to me was about leaving a bit of a legacy. It's also just a milestone marker. It's a mile marker, I should say. And I feel like I'm just getting started. I turned 40 this year. I feel like the next decade is going to be incredibly productive. And I wanted to have that snapshot and to build upon that moving forward.
Awesome. And I love that you'll leave a lot of different legacies in different ways, but for people who find your work through this book. And, another way that this book is being utilized right now is mentorship. You don't have the time or the bandwidth to be able to respond to every single person that reaches out to you or asks for advice, but you put it in this book to help people get started. How has mentorship been helpful in your career? I'd love to hear more about that, because I get pinged being in the career development space. People always ask me about mentorship. And so I wanted to see what your thoughts were around that.
I have an evolving thoughts around it. I think one of the newest thoughts I have around it is I found myself taking a little bit of time to mentor, quote unquote, very successful men, and doing so. I mean, they're paying me. I mean, I'm not a fool, but in doing so, I feel like that has a certain ripple effect that a one-on-one, one at a time would not have. And I mean, very successful. You know what I mean? People who can affect the lives and the livelihoods of thousands of other people, if not more. I think that is something that kind of turns things on its head, because we're so used to a society thinking that this we won't go back to, you know, every time we talk, we won't go back to race, but we're just used to a certain type of person being the leader, being the person we go to. We see it even with COVID. You know, early on, most of the experts that were on television were white men, and people started like making sure that they were being more diverse and representative. So I think about it that way. That's the newest. And then in general, I found that I have been mentored, not officially, most of my life. My mentorship has come from either finding tools, finding books, having people whispered in my ear. You know, Oprah has been my mentor. Will Smith has been my mentor. Richard Branson's been my mentor. They don't even know me. Janet, of course, Janet Jackson's been my mentor. Didn't know it. And then it's also in being open and receptive to those moments where someone is teaching you something. And it may not be a professional or an official setting, but you're learning that lesson in that sentence they just said, or in the way that you're walking down the street having a conversation, and you're watching them treat someone a certain way, and you say, okay, I'm going to take that and I'm going to use that. You know, they're using this way of talking to someone. I'm going to use that later on. So I think it's been like this homeschool, self-created mentorship package.
Yeah, I love that you said that there are people that you have chosen as mentors that may or may not know about you, right? Or that you utilize them. And that's the same for me, like growing up and being one of the onlys, even in my career, I had to tap into other people. Otherwise, I'd feel like really isolated and lonely. And I think there's this misconception that the person has to know you to be a mentor. Like, I got to slide this paper over to you, Arlen. Yes or no? Will you be my mentor? Otherwise, you know, my life is going to crumble.
Yeah. You know? And I have to say, there's going to be more value that someone's going to get, I promise you, from spending several hours listening to my podcast, reading my book, or listening to the book, listening to interviews, past interviews, like I've done I did it last night. I do it every single day. I listen to hours of other people's content to continuously upgrade, you know, and there's going to be more value in doing that at home yourself with your headphones on than if we were to have multiple conversations. Now, of course, there's going to be moments where I can have that inflection point. I can help you, but I promise you, if you can't get to me, which it's not a big deal, because it's preserved. There's so much information, and now you have the leverage, and now you have the power, because you get to take that in when and where you want.
Yes, and it's so cool that we have the technology to where there was a time where we didn't have the access, and we were limited by the information that we could have. And now, you can have your own masterclass anytime you want.
Absolutely right.
I love it. So use It's About Damn Time as the mentor in your head. Use Arlen, listen to her podcast, listen to her content, because it's so important that we redefine what leadership looks like. That's why I have this show, is because, we're on LinkedIn here, and most of the people who have LinkedIn Live Access and a lot of the content creators don't look like me or Arlen. So we have to change and redefine. While we're doing that, if you have any questions, please leave them in the chat, because we want to make sure that we get that. But one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about too, Arlen, is some people might be watching and saying, hey, I'm not a founder, I'm not an entrepreneur, but I'm interested in the book, I'm interested in learning more about you. Is this for the career man or woman, or however folks might identify?
100%. And I'm sorry, it is early for me on the West Coast, and my voice takes a while to catch up to me. It is for people I wrote this book for the person who did what I used to do, which is you're doing 8 hours or more of data entry, and you need something to motivate you. You are working for someone else. You are driving around delivering things. You know what I mean? This was written for everyone who has felt underestimated.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's for them, not just because I say so, and not just because of course, you want more people to read your book, but I know it because of the people who come back to me and say, I read your book and it was for me. And they don't even know what venture capital is, like I didn't know 10 years ago. It can be really utilized, just like your book. The memo can be used by people who work for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's interchangeable. Yep. Or people who are, in startup land because they are starting companies. They're going to be employing people, and they want to know how to treat people. I mean, it's very much so interchangeable. And what I've also been very excited about is that a lot of men of all races, a lot of men have read the book and enjoyed it and felt that it was worth their time as well. And I think that surprised me.
Yeah. No, I love this. And I think that people too, again, when we redefine what leadership and success looks like, we look at different parts of our life. And so maybe you'll never create your own company, but you might invest in one. And I hope we all have, the opportunity to do so. But then also you might be an entrepreneur. How do you start something at your company that you work for, right? We can all play different roles inside of our companies and our organizations. So don't think that it's just a one size fits all. This is only for them. This book has life lessons for every walk of life.
And truly, most of the book is about a time where I worked for somebody else, because that was most of my life, of course.
Yeah, I love that. We're going to take a question from the audience, and then we'll jump back in. So many great content. Angela says your fundraising journey with institutional investors has given unique and non-traditional background. Not 100% sure. Maybe you could talk about your unique background in fundraising and how you've been able to leverage some of that experience.
Sure. So just real briefly, as a venture capitalist, as all venture capitalists have to do, we have to raise money from other people. Now, some of our money is locked into that. And the best venture capitalists will have as much money of their own in their own funds as possible. That's what I aspire to. And I was able to start last year really doing that in a meaningful way. But you have to go out and ask people for money, just like founders are asking investors for money. So there are different types of investors in funds, and they can range from high net worth individuals to endowments at the schools that are recognizable. And so there's obviously an entire conversation about that, but it has not been easy thus far. But I do think and know that is changing. With me and several other people who have been leading that charge.
Yep, I love it. And thank you for your question. Sometimes when they're coming up, I get bits and pieces. So yeah. I hope that got the answer.
I know how to just doing this live stuff. I was doing a multiple interview. I've decided to challenge myself and have like multiple people on the interview. And I'm like, I get halfway in and I'm like, can I really do this? Can I really keep up with everybody?
It is a lot. Get help when you need it is the life lesson here. But one of the things that I wanted to jump back into is mentorship, because one of the things that I've noticed in that, going back to some people thinking that there has to be this formalized request in order for someone to be your mentor. But how have you seen some people maybe go down the wrong path on how to approach someone to be a mentor? Because now we have access to a lot of people. And so sometimes there's a sense of entitlement. I'm sure you've seen a lot of different things, but we want to make sure that our leaders don't make some of those same mistakes when they're approaching, leaders online.
Yeah, there's I guess you would call him a mentor at one point. Now we're peer mentors, we call each other. Brad Feld, who is a well-known venture capitalist and author. When I was first starting out, I reached out to him, and the email is still there, so it's not going to go away, right? I reached out to him, and it was just the longest email in the world. And also, I was just like, forget all the small talk. We're not going to do all that. What we're going to do is you're going to invest in me, and you're going to be my mentor, and you're going to do this and that, and I'm going to do this and that. And I believe still in what I was saying fundamentally. I was staying true to myself, but what I thought at the time, which I think I've learned differently, is that I thought that was my one shot. And a lot of people come to me and to others as if it's your one shot. If you don't get it it's over. And so there's a little bit of a desperation that leaks out. And I'm saying this from someone who used to do that constantly.
Yeah.
And it is not the way to get people to be excited about you. And it's more about showing what value and what assets you have in a very kind of contained way, and practice. You know, you can practice pitching to people. You can goes with a lot of things. You can practice with friends, family. You can continue to craft and edit. I say if you're writing an email, for instance, every time I write an email that is more than a couple of sentences, I'll go back and I'll cut half of it off. No matter what, I just cut half of it off, because you most likely don't need it all. So it's that. And then I think the big takeaway with the time we have is to say, think through, okay, if you're approaching someone to be your mentor, you obviously have a reason you think highly of them, or you wouldn't be approaching them.
Yeah.
So think through what sort of bandwidth and what sort of schedule they may have. You won't know it all, but think through how you're going to get through all that. And if you even should get through all that, or if you should take the advice from before and sort of pull in the things that they're actually giving out for free or for paid. And there's some different hacks too to mentorship that I believe in.
Yep, I love that, and I hope you're taking notes, because and again, be kind to folks too. I know sometimes when people like send a message, we can't always respond, but how do we make it a teachable moment if we want to? Because I think about what Arlen was saying. If we went back and looked at some of my emails, oh my God, desperation was they need a mop just to get me out.
There's that, and then there's also respect. Like, I look back at my emails and I don't cringe.
Yeah.
I don't say, oh man, I treated someone poorly. I say, oh, I was overzealous. I was this, I was that. So I don't mind when that happens to me. What I do mind, and what people can control, no matter what their situation is the tone in which you come at somebody. Like you say, you may be even alluding to this. I will have some people, if I don't respond to them in 2 days or a week or 2 weeks or a month, I mean, I get thousands of messages a week. What are you supposed to do with that, right? But if I don't respond, sometimes people will write back and they'll be like, oh, you forgot where you came from. Or, oh, okay, I guess you don't have time for this. I guess this is not important enough to you. And it's very like, whoa, you know, we don't know each other. I don't know any of my friends, families, or foes who would talk to me like that. So why would a stranger be allowed to talk to me like that? And I'm trying to, you know, have that empathy for them, but I think about the roughest times I've ever had. I've tried to be kind and respectful to people. I will call you out for sure. But that's a little angle that comes from that hunger. And sometimes people are really in tight spots and they feel like it's their only way out is you. It's not the case. The only way out is you, the person.
Yes.
That's the only way out.
Yep. I'm so glad you said that. And I'm glad that you came back to it. It's not going to be your one and only shot. I think that's the story that we tell ourselves. And I think just as leaders, because we all have a sphere of leadership, that what's for you is for you, right? So if Arlen doesn't respond, or if I don't respond, or somebody else, it doesn't mean that that's your last shot. You know, the way I look at it is I'm just waiting for the right person to respond back, right? Who we're supposed to partner with, or maybe the time is not now, right? It's later, and understanding that it's not to take it personal. But I think just in business, we have to have that as part of our business acumen, knowing that not everything's not going to happen according to our time.
Let me tell you, the reason I brought up the Brad Feld story is because the reason I remembered it is because I just had a video conference with him where he is being so helpful to me. He became an investor a few years ago. He's been so helpful. He's continuing to be helpful. Can you imagine if I had gone off on him because he didn't get back to me in 5 days originally, even though I was hungry physically, literally, even though I was worried about where I was going to be. Can you imagine if I had gone off on him and not had a little bit of foresight? Your network is not an overnight situation. Your network is built over decades. And so the way you treat someone when they're ghosting, if they have to, or if they're being silent or they're responding and they don't have time for you, leave that as like a photograph, a snapshot, the way that you left that conversation that you would be proud of.
Yep.
Coming up and being leaked 5 years later.
Yeah, that part. that part. A question that we'll take from the audience is, Arlen, what are you seeing in terms of crowdfunding? Are companies taking second looks at companies who do well with crowdfunding, or are they kind of
Yeah.
to the side?
So crowdfunding can be a few things. It can be a public offering, like on these websites that we know, or it can be a private one. We actually have a private one at BackstageCrowd.com. Can't talk too much about it, obviously, because different things, but you can go to that website and check it out. I think crowdfunding in general has, and historically, been a little bit of an issue with downstream investors, meaning the investors that meet you later on, and they have the bigger checks, and sometimes they get a little elitist, and they're like, "Oh, you crowdfunded? What does that mean?" And then more people of color are crowdfunding than not, and so that adds this extra stigma to it. I think now people are, though, figuring it out. They're figuring out that, wait a second. And I think of things like Pebble or these other things that have been really, even on the, not even crowd equity, it was just crowdfunding. I think people are finally figuring out what we knew a few years ago, which is like, if you can get a few hundred people to back you on either an idea or something in market, and the crowd comes together to make that happen, that should be a good signal down the line, especially if you're able to follow through. And so I don't tend to think about what's going to be attractive to another investor. If I like something, I invest in it. And for me, I'm always counterintuitive to most investors. And to me, if you crowdfunded and you follow through on your crowdfunding, whether it was non-equity or equity-based, I'm going to be impressed with that. I'm going to want to see that. And you just have to be strategic and understand, like, some people are going to be like me and some people are not.
Yep. Good answer. One of the things that I want to roll into is our bonus questions, because I am a lover of grits and rap lyrics, and I cannot let you leave Secure the Seat without asking. Well, first of all, salt or sugar? Do you eat grits?
Oh, I eat grits. Okay. I was born in Jackson, Mississippi, raised in Texas. I eat grits.
Good. I knew.
I don't know if it's controversial. You say salt or sugar on the grits?
Yeah.
Ooh, I think we do both. Don't we do both? I do both.
You do both, huh? Okay. I'm
savory.
Salt and butter. But yeah, let us know how you.
Salt and butter. Where are you from?
California. But my family is from Louisiana, so my grandmother was making. Okay, we'll leave it there. What is your favorite rap lyric and why?
Ooh, so I don't know if I have a favorite rap lyric because they're so amazing. I'll give a couple. One is that, when I say I came for the cake, not the crumbs, people love that it's in my book. People attribute it to me. I've said multiple times, it is from a rap lyric, but I don't know from whom. I've been searching for it for years. I heard it one day and I loved it. And so that is definitely top three. I also have one that's kind of petty. And I'm not going to get it right completely. It's from Bone Thugs when they did like a really beautiful remix of Take Me Home by Phil Collins with Phil Collins. And it's beautiful if you haven't heard it. And they say, when I needed a ride, you wouldn't give me a lift. But now that I'm popping my Chris style, I won't say the rest of it. But it just means that you like me now. It's very vulgar after that.
Well, since we're on LinkedIn, we'll stop right there.
But it is so indicative of like so many people coming out the woodwork and like, oh, okay. I'm like, oh, okay. Now I'm interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah, you're like, it's about damn time, right?
Yeah, it's a very petty part, but I can't help myself.
I love it. And lastly, I wanted to ask you, we have a lot of leaders watching. Again, everyone is a leader in their own sphere. Question, how can we leave the workplace better than we found it?
Oh, by showing up as yourself. And I know that's so trite at this point, but it's so true. It's so true. You think about, I do think it's that I'm getting older and older that makes me feel this way. You just think about just the time you have, the short time we have, and the short time is a beautiful time.
Yeah.
It really is. If you think about it, if you really think about it, it's a beautiful time. And you have, you could be you said earlier, you could be anywhere right now, or you could be working anywhere. You could be doing anything. You could have any type of life. You really could. And you've decided to be at this specific place and this specific time. And that you have decisions you can make. And part of that is not just what that company left, what impression it left on you, but what impression did you leave on the company?
Yeah.
And I think that's the only thing we can really ask for.
Yeah, absolutely. We have people who are saying the rap song that you use, they're thinking about Mike Jones, you know, back then didn't want me. Now I'm hot. that one. But we appreciate you, Arlen. I'm going to take one last question from the chat. Someone wants to know, what do you think about formalized mentorship programs?
I like them if, you know, you're not going to know everyone and, you know, be able to vet, but I say vet, understand. I think that Valence, I think, is a great one that we're part of. I know Backstage itself, we have 500 or so mentors for our portfolio, and we really appreciate mentorship, even though I think I was misconstrued recently in press saying that I didn't like mentorship. I like mentorship. I just think that mentorship has to come with other things for it to be valuable, and has to have a road to something.
Yeah.
And so I like it when it's formalized. The most important thing to me is that it's built by people who are representative of who is getting the help and who is getting the mentorship. I'm not a big fan of white knighting or you know, doing things outside just for the sake of doing it. I think there's a lot of it. And then finally, I'll say there's a lot of peer mentorship.
Yeah.
There's a lot of peer mentorship that happens. You know, Issa Rae talks about that a lot, and Brad Feld talks about it a lot, where you look across and not necessarily up, because that's where you're going to get the most time from somebody. It's where you're going to get, again, that network built. Think about it like Marvel. You want those gems, you know. You want a few people who can really take you places.
Absolutely. This has been so great. How can people support you, find you, bring you to their companies to speak about your book, etc.?
Yeah, you can support by getting the book and gifting the book and letting people know about it. I think it's been very helpful to people, and you can just look at the reviews to see that. Also, if you are interested in having me speak at your company, I tend to do a little bit of that. You can reach out to me at my first name at backstagecapital.com, ARLAN at backstagecapital.com, or you can go to itsaboutdamntime.com and go to the contact page or the speaking page.
Awesome. Well, we know that everyone will go out, and if they haven't gotten the book, they'll get themselves one and they'll gift it to someone else, because success is not a solo sport. We all need the gems. Arlen, thank you for your time today. And thank you to all of you who've tuned in. Again, you could be anywhere. Make sure that you share this episode with someone that you care about and that someone that you do business with. We'll see you next week at noon.